That's Dr. Mark Pressman, the state's sleep expert, which you can imagine will refute the testimony brought forth by the defense's sleep expert. You have a sleep expert versus sleep expert. Have you seen this, Bob? Sleep experts versus sleep experts?
I have never had a sleep expert on the stand in 30 years of doing a case, but I predict, Jesse Weber, I predict that this expert is going to contradict what the defense's sleep expert said, leaving us once again, perhaps, with a nullity of experts versus experts. And in the end, that does not help the prosecution.
But I think the defense's expert put a good job, at least in the mind, that Mr. McIver may have suffered from a sleep disorder. And that sleep disorder might have been one of the reasons why he fell asleep with the gun. And that may have been one of the reasons why he woke up startled and fired the gun. And at the end of the day, whether we believe what that expert said or whether we believe what this expert will say, and I'm assuming what he'll testify to, isn't that reasonable doubt?
Yes. Let's look out for this. This will really show you the skill of these defense lawyers in this case. I'm looking forward to seeing the cross-examination of this expert because there is a lot. And a skilled cross-examiner for the defense, Jesse, is going to bring out the theory of their case regardless of the answers that the witness on the stand says. They're going to be bringing out what their sleep expert said through him, whether they say yes or no. But if I recall correctly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, there were actually objective documentation prior to this incident indicating that he had some level of sleep disorder.
Right. There was evidence that he had a problem.
That is something that they would use, again, as a stake against this expert so that you don't know. You can't definitively tell whether he was having a sleep-related episode that night or not, but you can't contradict the fact that there is documentation prior to this incident unless, again, getting back to Vinny's theory, the idea is that this is some guy that created a sleep disorder for a number of years in anticipation of killing his wife.
But I'm gonna counter you on this, okay? He didn't have such a sleep disorder that he couldn't function in life,
right?
Okay? If he takes a gun out and he perceives that there might be a danger, shouldn't he be even more aware at that point? Well, how could he really fall asleep with a gun in his lap if there's a danger? Now, you've heard testimony say, well, he thought that the danger, there was no more. It went away. He was okay. But then why keep the gun out? You can't have it both ways.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. You're getting to the ultimate conclusion. Will the jury believe the underlying facts that went on here and indicating that why would he have the gun? It was a sleep disorder. I don't disagree with you. So far, what everyone has presented, from the prosecution witnesses to the defense witnesses, has been able to be rebutted. So we need to go back to the primary basis of criminal trial work. It is the government's job to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, which is a very strong jury charge. That's to a moral certainty that the individual is guilty of each and every element of every offense, and 12 jurors have to agree with that. So everyone's putting witnesses on that are being contradicted. To me, that speaks of a hung jury or a not guilty.
All right. Well, we'll have to wait and see. Again, this is Dr. Mark Pressman, a sleep expert called by the state as a rebuttal witness. Let's listen in live. All right. That's Dr. Mark Pressman, a sleep expert called by the state. I hope no one's fallen asleep from hearing his background, but it's important nonetheless. Bob, we're learning about this man, and the jury has to believe him. The jury has to understand that he's a very qualified expert to talk about this, because sleep is a huge factor in this case when we're trying to determine whether or not Mr. McIver could have fallen asleep and whether or not that was an actual reason for him pulling the trigger. Does it make sense to you? Does it make sense to you that he would have fallen asleep, been startled, and pulled the trigger of the gun?
You're asking me that?
I'm asking you that.
Because I'm the only guy here, right? Well, it makes as much sense as it does for the state's ballistic expert to get on the stand and, while he's awake, pull the trigger. Things happen, triggers go off, right? And that was a dramatic thing. He wasn't even asleep and that happened. So is it possible? Yeah, it's possible, especially when the state can't tell you whether it was in single action or double action, mode. So yes, these things are possible. Again, the defense doesn't have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt they're possible. They just have to nick some holes here and there. So again, I anticipate that the cross-examination by the defense first is going to cross him, at least this is the way I do it, on all the documents and things he did not review in his report that would have been relevant. That just initially breaks him down as a witness. That don't you think these things are important to review the entire file? It's been my experience, despite how much that that is such a successful cross-examination model. Many times, and we'll see if the state did it here because they're a little sloppy, they don't give the expert all the data. When they do that, they put the expert into a box. Well, this is all important information that was withheld from you. And then the second part is contradicting him based upon the testimony that was given by their expert.
And we can't forget that the defense is the one who's introducing the sleep issue. They're the ones who introduced this issue, and now it's the rebuttal by the state trying to counteract that issue, that sleep is not an issue in this case. It is not because of sleep that Diane McIver is dead. It's because of the intentional actions of Tex McIver. Let's listen in live. Okay, that's Dr. Mark Pressman, a state sleep expert. Let's break it down what you just heard. Again, I'm here with Law and Crime trial analyst Bob Bianchi. Bob, this witness just said that in his opinion, Tex McIver was not suffering from a REM sleep disorder in the night in question. He was awake when he fired that gun. He could not have entered into a REM or deep sleep in the 7 or 10 minutes when he was driving in the car. It takes minutes. It takes, I think he said at one point, it takes maybe 60 to 70 minutes to enter into that deep sleep state where something like a disorder could happen. So again, really shedding doubt on the defense's theory. What do you think about it?
I think as a defense lawyer, I would be getting up in front of the jury and saying, you need to use your common sense in this case. And let me ask you folks this. Have you ever just been in that space in your life when you're just kind of in between going to sleep and falling asleep and been startled by something and jump out of your sleep and lurch? I mean, I don't know how relevant it really is whether he's in REM sleep or he's not in REM sleep. I think it's a common, ordinary experience that every juror is going to be able to resonate with, and I think that's the end of. In fact, I don't know if I'd cross him on this. This is where the art form of trial work comes in, because an expert, Jesse, my mentor always told me, look at an expert witness like a bear in a cage. You want to make sure that cage is locked. You want to get a big stick like 10 feet long, and you want to kind of just poke them a little bit and back up. You don't want to get too deep into the mixing up the science because they have more knowledge than you. So it's a common sense argument that I think rebuts this.
All right, let's listen in and see how he does under cross-examination by Amanda Clark Palmer. Take a look. Dr. Mark Pressman, the state sleep expert, is now under cross-examination by the defense, and you can hear them talking about his findings and trying to question that. Again, I'm here with Law and Crime trial analyst Bob Bianchi. Bob, when you have an expert on the stand, what is the key to attacking their credibility, their bias, their knowledge base, their findings in general? What is the key here?
I love expert cross-examination. It's one of my fortes. So the first thing is preparation and getting all previous opinions, as many as you can, court decisions or testimony that expert has testified, because a lot of these experts kind of repatriate themselves in cases. Sometimes they're testifying for the prosecution, sometimes for the defense.
We've seen it here, by the way. We've seen experts reappear in multiple trials.
Yeah, I mean, I had a trial not too long ago where I was literally said to the expert, well, were you lying under oath in Philadelphia or were you lying under oath here in court? And he said in Philadelphia, which the jury laughed at. I mean, they literally, from that point forward, I own the guy. But again, we go now in the courtroom, we go back to how you present that evidence and that keeping that bear in that cage and keeping it locked. So you don't want to tangle too much with science. One, what documents were not reviewed, what scientific literature or text dispute the opinion that's being given. Common sense, I have found, is a great way to kill experts. They're not used to being able, like I just said to you before, sir, in fact, I even asked your guests, your people online, have you ever been in a situation where you were in the middle of falling asleep before you were in REM and were startled? What's he going to say? No, the jury won't believe him. I think that's a killer question.
I think, again, especially for this kind of expert, common sense really does go a long way. He's being grilled by Amanda Clark Palmer, who is a very, very brilliant and well-educated and just a tremendous attorney. She's been fantastic this trial. So let's listen in right now. I hope no one is falling asleep as Mark Pressman, the sleep expert, is on the stand. That's not the goal here, ladies and gentlemen. It is important testimony because really a key factor in the shooting of Diane McIver was, did Tex McIver suffer from a sleep disorder? And did that sleep disorder really prevent him from firing that gun? In other words, was this an accident? Was this an accident because of a sleep disorder? That's the bottom line. And again, I'm here with Bob Bianchi. Bob, in your experience, how often do defendants blame their actions on a condition?
All the time. First of all, they're always blaming it on some condition, something else, something other than themselves, or something that they weren't able to control. It's typical human nature. Since the kid grabbed the cookie from the cookie jar, it's been going on, with us as humans. There's a deflection. And what's really fascinated me in my career is how I've cross-examined witnesses. I genuinely believe their own lies and deceptions. I'm not saying that it is here, because he has a documented sleep history, which I think is going to be very problematic on a good cross-examiner of this witness, because it's in the record. But more importantly, Jesse, like we said before, I think using your common sense that you don't need to have a sleep condition to be startled when you're sleeping.
Yeah, and Bob, they brought it up under direct examination that with somebody who was handed a gun in a situation where you felt you needed a gun, would you be asleep? No, you'd be awake. And again, really trying to hone in that point that if you were handed a gun because of a dangerous situation, would you really get so sleepy that you would fall asleep while holding the loaded weapon? Now I'll play devil's advocate here, because he did have something to drink. And he did hold guns all the time, so it wasn't like a big occurrence for him. But even so, in common sense, what do you think?
No, I don't think this. I don't know. There's a feel to this, Jesse. I don't know how to explain the same way. It just seems to be a feel that we're taking some facts, some known facts, and stretching. It could be this, and could it be that, and maybe this, and maybe that.
This is what we do.
Yeah, but no, and we're asking. That's because we're working with a set of facts that is not solid, conclusive, from which you can draw reasonable inferences from. The facts that we know, you can draw 2 and 3 inferences from, and that's what spells disaster for the prosecution.
All right, everybody, let's listen live to Mark Pressman. That's the defense having some trouble there cross-examining Dr. Mark Pressman. I want to bring in Bob Bianchi. Bob, one of the interesting parts about this is, according to Dr. Pressman, when he reviewed Tex McIver's interview tape, Tex McIver said in the tape, when they were driving through and he saw the groups that were gathering, the hair stood up on the back of my neck. Now, he's taking that literally, which would be an actual physical symptom of fear. And if someone's so fearful, how could they go back to sleep? But couldn't the defense say, he's not literally saying the hairs are standing up on the back of his head, back of his neck. Isn't that an avenue for the defense to explore there?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's almost like it goes to his credibility. Like, this is an expression that's being used, doctor. It's not something that's literal. And since you use that as being a literal fact that the hair stood up and then made this assessment, therefore you couldn't have fallen asleep. Now that you know, or assuming that it was in fact just a statement that people use, like it's hot as heck in here or whatever, that would have to alter your conclusion, would it not? See, I'm a little surprised at her. She's good. I love the defense in this case. But you do not allow open-ended, direct examination style questions with an expert like this. He's got too much data that he can throw in.
You said you don't want them to look like a professor up there.
Yeah, the last thing you want to do is say, can you tell me? And he's telling her how to pronounce a certain study. He's acting like a professor in front of the jury. And each time he does that, he's gaining more and more credibility. So a simple fact like the one you just raised, Jesse, about the hairs on the back of your neck, could be a very, very important thing to develop for 10 or 15 minutes with very specific questions to say, if you made a mistake with respect to understanding what that statement meant, doctor, how many other mistakes did you make? Or when she said, you mean it's impossible that nobody could? These are open-ended questions that I really think are hurting her. I'm surprised, given the skill and the style, that they're not more direct and more like this hair on the back of your neck thing that you brought out, which is great, is a common sense thing that the jury would say, of course, that's what the guy meant. Let's
listen again to Amanda Clark Palmer. Again, this is the live feed in the Claude Tex McIver case. And again, let's not forget here that he is on trial for the murder of his wife, Diane McIver, and now faces only 1 count of influencing a witness. Take a look. You're watching Dr. Mark Pressman being I don't want to say grilled under cross-examination because he's handling himself pretty well. Again, I want to bring in Bob Bianchi. Bob, I know we have to sign you off right now, but I want your final thoughts on this witness and how the defense is doing under cross-examination, because it doesn't sound like they're getting from him what they want.
She's not a good cross-examiner of expert witnesses, or at least this kind of expert. She's asking too many open-ended questions. There were so many statements that the man gave that she could have really went on a common-sense way to hammer him with yes or no questions. He's too relaxed. Look at his body language. He knows he's in control of the scenario. She's fuddling around looking for, if you don't know how, or if you don't have the data to cross-examine an expert witness, for God's sakes, she's in the cage right now, Jesse. Hope she's not going to lock it with her and the bear in the same spot.
Well, we'll have to see. Bob Bianchi, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jesse.
All right, everybody, let's tune in live. Again, this is Dr. Mark Pressman testifying in the Claude Tex McIver case.